Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all to the second day of 10 Days International Conference on Social Work, Sciences, Technologies, Environment, Climate Change, Disaster Management, Health, Well-being, and Sustainable Development 2023, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 75 years of independence, India's G20 presidency, and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs 2015 to 2030, as part of awareness and campaigns, and World Health Organization 75th anniversary, and also 4th National Social Work Week 2023. In collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Well-being, and international and national fraternity. Before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue with today's sessions. So today, we'll look at social work history in India. So before we start our session, so we request all the presenters who have registered and are awaiting for their presentations. Those who have registered for on-spot registration can share your details in the chat box so that we can invite you after this session. So you can leave your details along with your topic in chat box to the host or co-host. So yesterday we were looking at developments of social work in the West. Though social work as a profession was recognized and developed by Western countries based on Western models, but the foundation, the roots of social work has been seen in the long Indian history. So we can see the seeds or the roots of evolution of social work can be explored in various ideologies across the world, like secularism, humanism, Protestantism, rationalism, welfarism, liberalism, democracy, and utilitarianism, and so on. So when we talk about social work or social service, in fact, social service is for everyone, including social workers. Social service can be done by any human being, irrespective of one's profession, one's qualification, one's socio-economic, cultural status, and one's political, religious affiliation. So for doing any social service, you don't need any eligibility or a qualification as such. Anyone can do, including social workers. So the criticism that social workers face, especially, is social workers being professionally trained and they look social work as a profession to earn their livelihood, and at the same time as a profession to pursue the further career. They don't do much of social service because, social service, when we are doing social service or when we are taking up social welfare programs or social welfare initiatives, often we don't expect anything in return. It is our duty, we are performing our dharma. Dharma, which is our duty towards our fellow beings, our duty towards our nature, our duty towards the environment, our duty towards the planet. So without any expectations, we take up activities based on one's capability, one's potential, one's interest, and based upon the need, irrespective of all the said and done. But the criticism, especially with the social workers, is that they don't come forward for doing social service. So that we should not forget that as a social worker, we are still human beings and we are also equally responsible or accountable or eligible, or for that matter, equally have the opportunities to do social service. Of course, there is difference between social work as well as social service. As social work can be done by anyone, which does not require any formal training or formal education. But at the same time, we should not forgo social service, being a social worker or a trained social worker or a professional worker, social worker. So this is a great criticism and is one of the most important aspects that social work is still, though it is recognized as a profession, but still it lacks the popularity or a much wider recognition because of this major constraint, major limitation that social workers are putting themselves away from this social service. Being a social worker doesn't mean he cannot be compassionate, he cannot be human, and he should not perform social service. No social worker, whether he or she is being trained academically or in field, whether he is qualified or licensed or experienced, should not divide himself or herself for taking up social service. Because social service is the basic thing, helping others to help themselves. If we are not a good human being in the very first place, no matter what we become, whether we may become a counselor, whether we become a teacher, whether we become a psychologist, or whether we become a social worker, still we are lacking the humanity. We are lacking the human touch. We are lacking the human experience. Because of that, still it is being treated indifferently. When we talk about dharma, it's one's duty, and without any expectation, and which does not divide anyone from performing their duty. It doesn't mean that you should not expect when it is the only source of livelihood. But at the same time, when you are professionally trained, when you are academically trained and competent enough, you should be in the front line. You should be always at the reach of a common man or a common woman. Unless and until you are at the reach of the common man or woman, you cannot be a good social worker in the very first place. Because social worker is not a person. Often there are two notions of social work, especially one where social worker works at a grassroots level without expecting anything. And at the same time, there is other notion that like any other chartered accountant or an advocate or a medical professional or a doctor or a scientist or a professor, any profession for that matter, who gives their services, their products and services with a charge or on a chargeable basis. So when social worker is confining himself or herself with such a system, he may not be reaching the unreached. He may not reach the nook and corner of the nation. He may not reach the ones who were never reached by anyone. And that's the reason, many times when we interact, even on professional platforms, that why social work as a profession, why social worker is not being recognized, because of the various reasons. This is one reason where social worker is not available, and social worker is always expecting something in return for their services. Doctors are doing social service. Teachers are doing social service. Advocates are doing social service. Judges are doing social service. Police and security personnel are doing social service. Then why not social workers do social service? In fact, they should also start their work with social service and take it up to a professional level. That is where we are lacking behind in the recognition and also in delivering the products and services. Mostly we see when some tragedy happens, some conflict comes out. When there is some accident, when there is some disaster, we don't see a social worker in that place as a first respondent. Why? So we need to relook at ourselves, our profession, our training, our strategies. Why we are not able to put ourselves or push ourselves beyond all these limitations and be the first responder or be the first person to respond, to rescue, or to provide help, assistance required for the needy. And some say that social work is a commercial product of social service. So social service is free, can be done by anyone without any expectations. But social work is something, is a commercial version of social service where if you need to obtain some services or products, you need to pay to the social worker. This is also some common notion that is widely prevalent where social workers are facing challenges in due recognition in the community as well as in the profession and various platforms. When social worker fails to perform his or her duty as a human being with humanity, and he fails to perform his dharma, duty, is not compassionate, and if he or she is not able to provide services to the community without expecting anything, for that matter, see, doctors also charge, teachers also charge or take salaries, and advocates take salaries. It doesn't mean or they have their own offices for practice. So there is nothing wrong, even for the social worker also, to establish his own office or organization or an NGO to provide services, and at the same time to get employed in any organization or institution or an NGO to provide his services. It's absolutely fine. But at the same time, because this is a profession where social workers are trained to be more empathetic, more compassionate, and more caring, and having more concern about the community, especially those who are vulnerable, especially those who are vulnerable in terms of physical, like disabled, partially disabled, completely disabled. In terms of psychological or mental or emotional, including psychiatric illness or disorders, those who are mentally retarded or with intellectual disabilities, or those who are socially backward, and those who belong to scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, and backward classes who were still, to some extent, are socially, economically backward when compared to other communities, and to the vulnerable women and children of all communities, and those who are living below the poverty line or the low income population. So these are the areas where a social worker, for that matter, any person, even without a qualification or even without a training, formal training or formal education, anyone who can perform their dharma or duty or willing to do some service or some act of help or support, coming forward and performing their dharma or duty. It's an individual responsibility. Like we talk about corporates, corporate social responsibility. Here it is the individual responsibility or individual social responsibility to act in favor of the betterment of not only just ourselves, but also our community, but also to the society, betterment of the nation and planet at large. Unless and until we address these issues and we are able to reach them, and wherever there is a possibility of raising funds or getting projects or undertaking programs as part of policies can be taken forward, and also perform both the social service and social work activities. But often, by undermining this great potential, by dividing one from social service, they are also losing the opportunities where the social service activities can be taken to the next level, that is empowerment. Empowering of the vulnerable or empowering the needy or the destitute or the poor or the illiterate or the disabled or the disadvantaged. So these provide ample of opportunities not only for common man or woman, but also the social workers. But when there is no income or when there is no funding available and people are dividing themselves and restricting themselves not to provide any social service to the people, as there is no one paying for them or there is no benefit for them, then, somewhere down ethically or morally, the social worker by heart is not performing his or her duty. Because social worker has to be compassionate, caring, loving, having concern. But when the sole criteria of exhibiting or expressing or offering help or support is solely based on certain benefits or income or funding, then somewhere the entire system is lacking the credibility or accountability. So this is one aspect where we need to look upon, where the Eastern models and Western models are differing, especially these charity models. Basically the Eastern model, or what the Sanatana Dharma teaches us is, the person who seeks help or support should be treated equally at par with the one who helps him or her. He or she who is seeking help or support should be treated at par with the one who helps him or her, with the same dignity, with the same respect, the same value, and with the same honor. That's why our elders, ancestors used to say that when we do something, when we donate something, when we help someone, it should be kept in secret so that the dignity, the respect, the honor of the person who is seeking help from us should not feel inferior, should not be humiliated, should not be underlooked by ourselves, by our family members, or by society, or by communities at large. So to protect them, to protect their interest, to protect their honor, to protect their respect, to protect their value, our elders, our ancestors, our Eastern models, especially like Sanatana Dharma, or for the matter, Hinduism and various other religions, have safeguarded the seeker's interest so that his or her dignity, respect is protected. But nowadays, with the Western models of charity, or, because most of the Western models, especially these Western, the concept of charity was entirely different in India. As charity, the word charity itself came from the West, from Christian missionaries, from churches, where, there was a purpose, there was some expectation behind everything they do. In fact, if we look at the history, those who have studied social work, those who have studied history of social work, they all know how even the social service was transformed into social work, and the social service, which was a free service, was transformed into a social worker where people were charged for providing services. Like, if you all remember, those who are from social work background, we all might remember how certain charity houses in UK and various in the West countries in general, even we have seen in the history where to distribute blankets, to distribute food materials, they were charging something which were for a price, no matter what the price is. Definitely it is the price, which was lower. Generally, that's how this seconds concept came. Now, all these second sale, which are most popular in the West, that's how these Christian charities, especially because this charity concept came from the Christian missionaries, and from church, where these entire concepts of charity, these Western models of charity, that's why we call, are different from our Eastern models of charity. We see dharma differently. Charity, the act of charity, we pursue it, we see it differently, and we take utmost respect of the seeker. But in West, it is not so. And that is also being blindly followed here without taking consideration of dignity, value, respect, and privacy, confidentiality of the seeker. So now you see a lot of advertisements. Even if you donate 1 rupee to beggar, you take selfie and post everywhere. Some get it posted, printed, and published in newspapers, and some share it on all the social media platforms, on their official and unofficial websites, blogs. So can it be called as a true charity, or a true dharma, or a duty? You are not performing your duty. There you are expecting something in return. And this is not kindness, this is business. So the Western concept of charity is entirely business models. These are not charity models. In fact, in the name of charity, they do business. And somehow the entire social work, which came from the Western, have also imbibed this business model into the social work education. That's why social workers see themselves, every act they do, as a business. And even Institutions also impart that you should not do anything for free and you should charge for everything you do. So that's how, the ideologies, also Western ideologies, have influenced the schools of social work or the practice or the profession of social work as a business models, but not as social welfare models. It is widely seen and widely practiced also. So we are not criticizing. So it's nothing wrong also, because they also need to survive. They also have to earn livelihood. Social workers or professional social workers also need to survive. They also have families. They also need to take care of their families' requirements. They also have children. But at the same time, they have chosen a noble profession. And social work is not a profession to make profits, or at least a huge profit source in social service or social work. It is a profession basically intended to provide service to the people or to the communities. And it is not always in the form of materialistic or not always in the form of monetary that we get in return. It is the happiness of the people, the increased standard of living of the people and communities, those who got benefited, the beneficiaries of various programs, policies, packages, those who have benefited and helped them, had made them empowered through training, support, education, awareness, skill development, and various programs. So this is where the major difference between Eastern models and Western models of charity or social work, even that ideology is now highly even prevalent, and that is only what taught in social work institutions. That's why there is a great need in the ideology itself, to be recognized social work as a profession by everyone, or even by a common man as a frontline worker, or as a person who is always available for the help or support. So social workers should strive to such an extent and go deep into the grassroots levels so that he or she makes himself available to the common people for addressing various concerns and issues. Unless and until this change comes, social work as a profession will stay as a profession like any other profession, but it loses its uniqueness as a social work, which it was intended for. It will become like just any other business. Social work practice or profession will also become like any other business or like any other product or service. The uniqueness will be lost unless and until we have the right kind of education, right kind of social work models and right kind of social work practice, which are culturally relevant, socially relevant, which are relevant to the local, geographical, and as well as to the geopolitical. And as well as the cultural aspects. Because without these, no matter what you do, it will always exploit the situations. We have seen how some missionaries, in the name of social service or in the name of social work, is doing some other work in the name of social work or social service. They have a mission and vision of performing something else in the name of social service or social. So these hidden agendas and propagandas are often destroying the rich cultural heritage, the diversity of the nations, of the communities, of the societies, of the families. Without understanding this, no one wants to be alike. No one wants to eat the same food every day, every time. No one wants to eat or wear same design, same pattern, same color, or same style of clothes every day, everywhere. That's why, no, is it possible? Would you be able to appreciate unless and until you are devoid of all these materialist things and you have become a sannyasi or a revered person for whom it doesn't matter as long as it serves the basic purpose it has to serve. Like food, anything is fine to the revered persons, the sadhus, sannyasis, sons, or the priests, those who are in sannyasrashram, those who are revered. For that, it doesn't matter as long as food is satisfying his or her hunger, as long as clothes are serving to protect his or her body from cold, heat, air, weather, climate, and the basic bare minimum necessities. But it is not the same case with everyone. Everyone has their own choices, own preferences. That is why we should protect this diversity, because everyone's preferences may not be similar or may not be same. Similarly, if we force, if we convert, if we compel everyone to be same, similar, alike, then that is where, you destroy the diversity. You should appreciate the differences. And you should also appreciate the diversity in various aspects among different communities and people across the world. So social workers play a major role, have to play a major role in protecting and conserving this rich cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, and various aspects of diversity, including lifestyle, habitats, their cultures and traditions, practices, languages, linguistic, diversity, and traditional medicine and ancient knowledge systems. So these are not universal in nature. They have evolved in the communities since ages, over a period of time, which are unique to their communities. Though there might be some similarities among other communities, but basically these serve the purpose, and this is what makes it unique. But without that, for that matter, blindly adopting and following Western models and ignoring the regional or the local models, which are more appropriate for the practice, for the education, for the training, definitely it is not going to bring the same benefits or the desired outcome. Why we are failing? Why we are not able to be seen as more important, or why we are not that recognized as elsewhere in the world or elsewhere in the nations across the world, is because of these models being culturally relevant. Culture plays very important, because culture and traditions and belief systems are close to the hearts of the people. Unless and until our practices, social work practices, are culturally, traditionally relevant to the people, to the communities, we will not be able to gain that popularity, gain that confidence and trust, and gain that appreciation from the people, from the community. That's why it is very much important to have models, to have frameworks, to have guidelines developed which are more relevant to the field or to the communities, to the people where the social work is practiced. Otherwise, the similar challenges continue to face, and it may lose its original uniqueness, or like we are losing the diversity and uniqueness. Similarly, the social work profession will also just become like any other profession, and it will lose its unique identity as a unique profession, as a noble profession, as a serving profession, as a compassionate profession, as a kind profession. If it becomes just like any other profession, just like any other education, just like any other practice, just like any other business, then it will lose its essence and it will become one among other businesses or professions, and it will lose its own identity for which it has been started or evolved. So we all, especially the social workers and social work fraternity, we need to be very careful. As we have seen how human beings suffer because of their selfish desires, ulterior motives in the community, society, without consideration of the other species, planet, nature, the entire development model has become a destructive model. And today, it is the high time that we need to learn to mutually coexist, to nurture peace and harmony, and to provide and safeguarding the habitats, ecosystems, biodiversity of nature, planet, which will foster humanity and also protection to human beings along with all other species, both living beings and non-living beings. If we see, since time immemorial, from gods to goddesses who ruled this planet in India and or we can call the present India or historical India or Akhand Bharat, or even earlier, and later the kings and queens and landlords, and later the invaders like these Muslim kingdoms, French, British, Portuguese, all these Christian invaders who came for the trade and settled down here in the name of the trade and have made settlements, communities here in India, and also conquered various kingdoms and destroyed a lot of rich cultural, historical heritage which were lost in the history. We have seen a lot of human sufferings. And the kind of atrocities that were committed on the people. And history speaks a lot of the kind of atrocities, the kind of cruelty, the kind of abuse that was caused as part of the invasion by the foreign invaders. And later on, with the independence of India, which was freed from the clutches of the British rule, and with the constitutional reforms, with the elected government in India, social work emerged as a profession from perspective of social work, charities, reforms, various welfare initiatives. From welfare to empowerment and development, social work has transformed or developed itself over a period of time from ancient, medieval, colonial, pre-independence, independence, post-independence. And the modern technological era, the social work profession or practice has been going through gradual change. And if you look at the various rulers, the kings and queens and landlords, or the protectors in ancient India, who has a strong ethical, moral, and spiritual values since Vedic period, since the origin of Indian society, the spirit of social service, or the spirit of charity, or the spirit of dharma manifested itself in various ways, in different spheres of life, at different stages, and inspired both the individuals and also groups of people in the society's communities. Primarily, it was the duty of the kings, queens, landlords to look after the welfare and security of the state and its stakeholders. State is a synonym here for the kingdom, for the state, for the nation, for the country, and so on, whatever is applicable. And over a period of time, diverse ways through which the social welfare programs were taken up over a period of time, along with close relationship with the environment and nature, since the beginning or since the inception of human race, has been the basis for mutual coexistence and survival. And as the societies evolved over a period of time, the civilizations started on the banks of the rivers like Indus Valley civilization and various other civilizations where humans started their habitats, and slowly there was a great deal of planning of habitats, kingdoms, and also over a period of time, urbanization with town planning or village planning and various architectures. So earlier days, Vastu, or the ancient architecture, was the ancient science. Even today, certain pseudoscience has crept into most of the sciences. But keeping that pseudoscience away from all the sciences, the ancient Indian architecture has paved way for proper town planning, and it has contributed a lot to the civilizations. Today also we see that most of the cities, towns, villages are planned long back, and still we are using the same infrastructure. As the cities are growing, we are expanding further and farther, and we have developed more institutions. Based on various occupations and roles to perform and guide the people in case of concerns, and also to keep the people in order. And there were many indigenous systems that were in place, which were practiced or followed since ages. Especially the Vedic period provides highest values and orders. These Vedic scriptures, especially the 4 parts in Vedas or Angas, which is called Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharvana Veda, emphasize that the religious hymns, mantras, musics, sacrifices, and knowledge, which are soul of human life, which was transmitted through oral tradition, called as Shruti, which was memorizing through listening and recitation. And even when we look at the basic skills of social work or counseling or psychology, or for that matter, any behavioral sciences, is listening. No? Listening plays an important role. That's how the Vedas have been transmitted intact without any error, any mistake, because the students were very good listeners. That's why listening plays an important role. So we can learn how the Vedas have been transmitted, to exactly pronounce and understand the meanings, recite the Vedic scriptures, the Vedic mantras. So the listening, which is an important skill, which was practiced in the Veda Pathshalas or Gurukulas, and that was the only mode of education where Guru, Shishya Parampara, that is teacher and student, or teacher or disciple, practiced by listening and through oratory skills, and learned the various Vedic scriptures. A number of systems, family systems, We have seen joint families, very large families, extended families, which were bound together by blood ties, which are real or supposed ties, that is through marriage, of kinship, clans, and several clans formed large communities which have similar clans, and these became tribes, evolved into tribes which were considered to be the largest or the highest political units or the administrative units. To ensure welfare and protection of the members of the tribe, clan, or family. They were also the messengers and also the communicators to timely assess people's needs, wants, and desires and aspirations. From time to time, prioritizing the needs within the available resources becomes the most important steps towards addressing these. And various gatherings or assemblies known by different names like sabhas, samitis, which are like committees, were constituted for discussing, for decision making, and ensuring people's participation and coming to certain resolutions. So basically, the dharma or the Eastern model of charity in Indian context was considered as morality. It's a moral responsibility or a moral behavior. So the roots or the seeds of social welfare were always part of it, early civilizations in India. Even there are many references in Indian literature on dana, dharma, like from Mahabharata. We all know that Karna, who is also known as Dana Veera Shura Karna. No, Dan Veer means he is considered as a rich giver or a great giver. And similarly, we have Raja Harishchandra as Satyavadi, who never spoke lies and very truthful. And we have Raj Boj, whose justice mechanism is based on the human values, and many. These are just for a reference. So the nature as well as the environment were considered part of the culture, tradition, religion, belief system, and are to be protected, conserved, and promoted. That's why, we have been able to protect and conserve the natural resources, rivers, forests, and so on. We see still in India, we pray or we thank the rivers, and we organize melas like Kumbh Melas, Mahakumbh Melas, to offer our thanksgiving, to offer our respect, to offer our reverence to the rivers, without which our civilizations wouldn't have thrived and survived. So every element, every aspect of nature, every aspect of environment is being worshipped, treated as godly, because we are entirely dependent on them for one reason or other. And they needs to be protected and conserved because it impacts our well-being, our health and well-being, and they provide resources for our needs, desires, wants. And there were great values, human values. There was a great practice of gender equality. Initially, even when we look at the history, women were highly empowered. Women were given due respect and regard. We have seen even in Stone Age also, where women were taking proactive role in hunting, except, and also in leadership qualities. Even in Vedic era also, we have seen where women had played a greater role. Even there was no concern or issue of gender equality or gender empowerment. Because both the genders, in fact, women were more powerful, more advantageous. We have seen even in Stone Age also, women used to go out, hunt, and bring food and resources. Only at the time when woman is carrying pregnant or, she was restricted to their homes or dwellings. Otherwise, most of the time, they were the breadwinners and they were leading their families and communities. Even in Vedic period, we have many research scholars, even many rishis or women rishi like Apala, Maitreyi, Gosha. There was no inequality or gender discrimination in Vedic times, in Vedic era. But later, This all gender inequality, gender discrimination, all started in the later Vedic era with the growth of these states where women's status was slowly declining, was becoming inferior to that of men. So the decline of the status started with later post-Vedic era. Because in Vedic era, we have seen many women who were revered. And when we have seen women who are having leadership positions, who are highly educated, and who also ruled the kingdoms, who also became rishis and brahmacharinis. Women were equally competent, in fact, more competent than men in the Vedic period. But it is not so. In post-Vedic period, the decline of the women's status has led this more of these Western concepts of Western societies or Western concept of societies with the establishments of various systems. The gender inequality has grown and the status of women has slowly started declining and has become inferior status. It was all in the Vedic, post-Vedic era. As we have seen in the tradition, the Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism, both are different, not same, but still in both of them we have sanskaras which are associated with human life. At each stage, at each or at a certain age, designated age, which influences the growth and development. And even we have somewhere 40 sanskaras, such sanskaras, which are widely known, popular. And we also had different kind of marriage systems, among which 8 were quite popular or more common. And among them, we had at that time certain marriages which were unlawful and prohibited, like Paishacha, Rakshasa, Asura marriages, which were considered as unlawful or illegal or unethical. And we also find similar challenges in post-Vedic era, increasing crimes against women and children. In Vedic era, in ancient times, the ashrama system delegated duties associated with relationships to provide discipline in human lives. Even when various kingdoms where the Mauryan Empire also had separate department of administration. Based on humanistic values. Even our present models of social work or indigenous social work or Indian social work models are highly influenced by humanistic values drawn from all belief systems, religions, because all are based on humanistic values, virtues. The eightfold paths of Buddhism finds its relevance in social work principles. Peace, dignity, and right to livelihood are living issues and frame ethical standards of a society, which are being practiced by NGOs and civil society organizations. In our times, the welfare initiatives by various kings in Mauryan Empire and also later by Ashoka and other kings propounded and promoted the virtue of care and upliftment of people by providing public business, infrastructure, and facilities. Even the ancient scripts such as Manusmriti by Manu, Ardhashastra by Kautilya, Mahabharata, which was written by Vedavyasa, also gave references about the political social institutions, which are examples of scientific governance. Where the king has played or is treated as a representative of God, and also mentioned in various scriptures like in Manusmriti. And Ardhashastra and Mahabharata also gave accounts of the electoral system long before the Loki in the West. Or Hobbes and Rousseau. They called it as social contract theory. Much long later, more than 2000 years later, they call the same thing as social contract theory. And the safety and security of the subjects were the roles and responsibilities of the king. The king was entirely responsible for the safety. So initially, it was the primary focus was safe states or security state. Then slowly moved to welfare state once, because the security was met, and slowly the focus moved on providing welfare services. Even today, we see, because after independence, once the nation is secure, we have moved from security state to welfare state, where our focus is to provide welfare services. And even in times of kingdoms, where the kings ruled the nations or states, king was elected by the people. At the Shastra, which was written by Kautilya, accounted state's role and king's role in detail, which was had an greater part over a person's social, economic, cultural, religious, spiritual, and moral life. There was no limit to the state sphere of activities, because state was entirely responsible. So within the functions of the state, both include security and welfare, and justice, economic control, industrialization, urbanization, modernization, and also maintaining of proper relationships within the family, within the community, within the society, and following the rules and strict observances of religious practices, cultures, and traditions, and establishment of various schools, institutions, colleges, universities, to impart education, ancient traditional knowledge system, Vedic education, for the promotion of various occupations and professions. These all played a greater role in socio-economic, political, cultural life of an individual. Welfare state, which was an ideal feature of an ancient India, as the king was the custodian of law, emerged from Dharma, also talked about karma theory as well, which propounded the essence of deeds. The good deeds bear wealth of happiness, well-being, as the king's happiness lies in the happiness of people or subjects. Welfare is most important of all societies, of all business. And the family was the basic unit or focal unit of a state or society. And the duty of the family was stated and made obligatory. As the head of the family, the breadwinner has to look after all the family members, all the dependents, including parents, widows, children in the family. And the state acted as a legal guardian in protecting the rights of minors and the needs in a family. and also as a court to punish the offenders, and subsistence to the helpless women and orphans who were taken care by the state, and provided various facilities like education. And relief to the poor was also important measures, and it was duty of the state to help and support even the poor and also the sick people, and in times of droughts, famines, disasters, to provide relief for the needy and distressed, and also to provide employment, self-employment, work, and opportunities, not only to the ones, but also to the leftover people on their own fate, like helpless widows, crippled women, mothers of prostitutes. We're all orphans, we're all taken care and are the responsibility of the state. Even for the slaves, prostitutes, the state was responsible for the welfare. The concept of welfare state has been beautifully explained or summarized by Apastamba. According to his text, the state has to provide food, clothing, shelter, and medical treatment to the people for free. But now, in the modern society, we see challenges that everything has become a business now. And everything, though still through public distribution systems and food security, people are being provided food, and through various housing schemes, shelter is being provided on subsidies, and also medical treatment through government institutions, hospitals. People are provided with medical facilities and health facilities and vaccination programs. To ensure that no one is suffering from hunger or diseases, and to make them available to the resources required, and also make resources affordable and available for such vulnerable groups and individuals. And India, if you look at India, India has a rich diversity with vast cultures and traditions, and also ruled by invaders like Aryans, Mughals, British, French, Portuguese, Sultanate, and Arabs. These all invaded in the form of trade and finally expanded their trade and commerce and captured various kingdoms and areas in India, and they promoted their religion, culture, traditions. As we have seen in India, there were no other religion existing in the long past. except Hinduism. With these French, Portuguese, Dutch, and other various invaders, or in the form of business, they established churches and various religions, religious institutions. And that's how the Christianity entered into the India. And along with the trade and commerce, they promoted their religion, culture, traditions, their language, their lifestyle here. And thus the Christianity, and in a similar way, the Islam by the Mughals and Muslim invaders, Arabs, with their invasion in the form of traders, and later on they established themselves in India and promoted their own culture, traditions, religion, and practices by converting people into their religions, and so on. It continued. And this is a history that is happening even today. So that's how, different cultures, different religions we have seen over the period of time. India was a rich country which has exported products such as spices, cotton, textiles, pearls, precious stones, and many more to various countries. We had the records of various scriptures and books, like book of morals, the famous book of morals, that is Panchatantra. Morals were taught through the stories of animals and birds, which were translated later in Arabic and were taken to Europe. And many ancient scriptures were taken from India and were translated into various languages and were taken away by various invaders, including French, German, Dutch, Portuguese, Arabs, and they translated them into their own languages. And thus, even our Vedas, Vedic scriptures, Upanishads, were also translated into their language, because India was considered as a capital of knowledge. And thus, the ancient knowledge, which was originated in India, has traveled across the world and benefited various countries. Animal loss and protection, conservation was not new in Indian culture and tradition. Even from Vedic times, animals were protected, and their dignity also is protected. They were respected. And we can find references in Hitopadesha, where the issues related to animal protection, conservation, and their dignity can be referenced. So later on, the British, Dutch, Danish, and various other invaders and various initiatives were taken up during colonial period. Where different forms of administration paved way for social work practice. India is primarily a land of agriculture, and Indian cultivators from time immemorial have depended mostly on monsoons for irrigation facilities, because there were hardly any irrigational facilities, that is canals or such irrigational facilities. And whenever the monsoons failed or delayed, famine struck. Even when the harvest was good, the produce couldn't be stored because of lack of storage facilities and inadequate processing facilities. And in the colonial era, in the colonial India, there were almost more than 13 famines in between 1770 and 1860. And there was no definite policy to deal with the problem of famine, and many initiatives or experiments to address these famines proved quite disastrous or unsuccessful. And later on, also there were 20 major and minor famines and scarcities in between 1860 and 1909. Later on, from the experience of poor loss in England, the colonial states developed their famine relief policy that needful help should be given to the needy, which gives smallest encouragement to undue reliance. It was modified in 1861 when the state decided to provide matching grants to private agencies for meeting the costs of feeding the destitute during famines. Later on, irrespective of states' financial power, soon the states were forced to give it up. That is the policy of saving life, because it was beyond their financial power or financial capabilities. So later on in 1880, Famine Commission was appointed and Famine Code was developed in 1883. And a commission was also recommended for famine relief, insurance, and alternative source of employment for the surplus population depending on agriculture. But because lack of genuine efforts, and even those administrators at that time was not interested in addressing these issues, the Feman Codes of 1883 were modified from time to time on the basis of experiences gained from the implementation of the codes. So, and various irrigational facilities and construction of few canals were taken up. And various agricultural land reforms led to the establishment of Department of Agriculture. And also various initiatives were taken up to improve the infrastructure of transport, development of transport, and construction of railway lines in India. The first railway line connecting Bombay to Thane was opened in 1853. And then Calcutta was linked to coal fields in Raniganj, and Bombay was connected with Kalyan. And in 1856, Madras with Arakkuna. So the development of railways was given maximum encouragement and connected to port cities like Mumbai, Calcutta, and Madras, where the raw materials were transported. So basically, this was only to help the colonials to move to help them in the movement of goods produced within the country from one part to another, and to protect, primarily to protect the colonial interest. But it was not interest of addressing the transportation issues in India. And slowly, by 1876, about 5,000 miles of railway lanes had been laid out, connecting most of the major cities in India, both by government and private British companies. And by the end of 19th century, over 25,000 kilometers of lines have been laid, which also provided unemployment, addressed unemployment issues by providing employment opportunities to thousands of unskilled laborers. And Charter Act of 1830 by which the company administration had to accept responsibility for education of India in colonial rule, which was the beginning of state system of education in India under colonial rule. So here, the westernization of education started. Slowly, gradually. But at the same time, the major objective was to impart Western education in India, and English became the official language in 1844, and it was declared that people having the knowledge of English would be preferred for public employment. So this was also to promote the interests of the colonial rulers In 1854, the colonial state declared its intentions of creating a properly articulated system of education from primary school to the university. Though even before that, we had one of the ancient universities in the world, and India was a hub for knowledge and education like Takshashila, Nalanda. These are quite ancient universities in India, where people from across the world, disciples, students from across the world came and studied and took back with them a great deal of knowledge to their nations. So slowly, even other aspects of development took place. We'll not get into detail. But we can say the 12th century, through a series of legislation laws under the colonial states, which has initiated programs for control of certain social problems like beggary, crime, and juvenile delinquency, especially in the metropolitan cities of Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras, which were in similar problems, even in England, faced in the process of industrialization. Social defense was a state intervention that first began in India. Prison reform movement in India under the British administration during 19th century, where NGOs were working in prisons for the welfare of the inmates. In the field of social reforms, many historic measures were taken. A series of measures of social legislation enacted by the state during 1828 to 56, 1829, abolition of slavery in 1843, and abolition of female infanticide and human sacrifice in 1802, Widow Remarriage Act in 1856, and in later half of the 19th century, which was the Age of Consent Act in 1891. With the efforts of Indian social reformers, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Ramakrishna Vandarkar, who have created an atmosphere which made implementation of such legislations possible. But the credit of passing these acts goes to the colonial state, which paved a way in the field of social justice. And this modern social work or Western social work introduced by Christian missionaries at the beginning of 19th century in India through their religious preaching and attacks on native religious practices. They attacked the Hindu and other existing religious practices in India, such as idol worship, caste system, sati, etc., by their educational activities in the form of social service and social work. And they promoted their religion and printed Bibles and translated Bible and other religious books into various regional languages and Indian languages, and started educating people and providing education and preaching the religion, and also distributing these Bibles in various Indian languages, which led to the beginning of process of social change and a mass conversion of other religions into Christianity. And often this is labeled as Renaissance by the Christian missionaries. And even in the name of social service or social work, many orphan children and destitute men and women were kept in the boarding houses run by the Christian missionaries, who were later converted into their Christianity in the name of social service and religion, and promoted their religion. And this example was also followed later by Indian social reformers like Shashpada Banerjee, Jyoti Rao Govind Rao Phule, Pandit Ramabai, and D.K. Karve, Kandukuri Veereslingam, and others who started widows' homes in different parts of the country. But they did not took up these activities, religious activities there, like conversion. I mean, no other missionaries have taken this task of religious preaching and conversions other than Christian missionaries. But they took forward this social service initiatives, social welfare initiatives, like starting orphan destitute homes and widow homes for these vulnerable population in different parts of the country. And during the last quarter of the century, organizations like Arya Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, and Ramakrishna Mission began to provide a variety of welfare services for famine, stricken destitute, orphans, and widows. By the 20th century, many sectarians, religious or caste associations in different corners of the country began to provide similar institutional welfare services. So even before these Christian missionaries came, and before these invaders have brought so many initiatives, even long before them, temples, kings were responsible and providing such initiatives, and these were entirely taken care by the state or the king or by the temples. Even before these Christian missionaries or other invaders started their invasions or their initiatives in social welfare or services. So the establishment of Sir Dorabji Tata Graduate School of Social Work, now known as Tata Institute of Social Sciences, by Christian missionaries with the financial help of the House of Tata in 1936, provided an evidence of the new social awareness and a vehicle for translating new ideas into action. So the post-independence era has witnessed major shift in ideologies, concepts, approaches in social work practice and profession based on the present needs and challenges and expanding on the welfare activities. The scope of social work practice also became wider to cater to all the spheres. And states began relating their social responsibilities towards weaker sections of the society. And Government of India took various steps for the welfare of the laborers by enacting Factories Act 1948. Section 85 of the Act empowers all the states to extend all or any provisions of the Act to any premise. The provisions included health, safety, welfare, employment of young persons and children, hours of work for adult and children worker, holidays, leave with wages. And the Royal Commission on Labour in 1831 recommended for appointment of labor officer with all attributes matches with a social worker. But for the first time, appointment of a welfare officer became a statute under the Factory Act 1948. Subsequently, in the Plantations Labor Act 1951 and in the Mines Act 1952, provisions were made for the appointment of welfare officer, wherein 300 or more and 500 and more workers were employed respectively. So in all these legislations, the qualification for the same was a degree in social science, social work, or a labor welfare. So this was a landmark where professional social workers were given due recognition in the field of labor welfare. Later on, is HR, human resources. HRM also emerged as a specialization in the MSW to meet the needs. In the first 5-year plan, 1957 to 56, welfare of laborers by extension of welfare activities, facilities were given due attention. The Plantations Labor Act 1951 and the Mines Act 1952, the Employees Provident Fund Act 1952 were also enacted during this period. And the second 5-year plan, 1956 to 61, focused on better working conditions, dock workers' safety and welfare, health and welfare were drawn up as a comprehensive scheme. The Assam Plantations Employees Welfare Fund Act was enacted in 1959. Plantation Labor Housing Scheme was launched in April 1954. And later, in third 5-year plan between 1961 to 66, which spoke about improvement of working conditions, Maternity Benefit Act 1961, Apprentice Act 1961, Iron Ore Mines Labor Welfare Cess Act 1961, the Payment of Bonus Act 1965, were few among various initiatives taken by the central government. In fourth 5-year plan, 1969 to 74, Employee State Insurance Scheme covered shops and companies' establishment, which provided medical facilities to the family of the insured persons and also economic benefit for the laborers was given prime importance. and Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970, the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, Employees Family Pension Scheme 1971 were also passed. And this plan directed all the state government to provide welfare centers, holiday homes, and recreational centers, and also enforcement of labor laws. The fifth five-year plan, 1974 to 79, stressed on setting up safety cells in various states for promoting industrial safety, Equal Remuneration Act 1976, and the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1979, were the important legislations enacted in this time. And in sixth five-year plan, between 1980 to 85, which focused on effective implementation of legislative measures, where governments were advised to provide benefit to agricultural laborer, labor workers, artisans, handloom weavers, fishermen, leather workers, and also other unorganized workers and laborers in rural and urban areas. Seventh plan in between 1985 and 1990 laid emphasis on the improvement of working and living conditions of the workers in unorganized sector, both in rural and urban areas. Rehabilitation of bonded labor, welfare of women and children workers education was stressed in the eighth five-year plan between 1992 to 1997. Even Construction Workers Welfare Cess Act 1996 was passed during this period. The ninth five-year plan in between 1997 to 2002 emphasized on strong enforcement of labor laws, and also setting up of national employment exchanges to register the job seekers. Including physically handicapped, along with the demand for labor in specific industries like coal mines and plantations, where the special attempts were made for the first time. And also to improve skills and productivity, new vocational training institutions were established and many of the industrial units were promoted for imparting apprentice training. In 10th five-year plan, 2002 to 2007, efforts were taken to increase the coverage of labor market institutions, and the emphasis was on vocational training and skill building of laborers was the main focus. Many central trade union organizations like INTUCT 1947, HMS 1948, UTUC 1994, BMS 1995, CITU 1970, and NLO 1969 emerged and helped the growth of labor welfare movement. Similarly, various initiatives were taken which had provided ample opportunities for the social work. Tomorrow, we will look at various social workers or social reformers who have paid way for social work practice So with the So we will stop here today and we'll continue tomorrow. We thank everyone for joining us today and request every one of you to fill up the feedback form, which has been launched in the form of polls. Before you leave the platform, it is mandatory to keep track of your attendance and also to take your feedback on the sessions. Feedback form has been raised in the form of polls. We request everyone to fill up the feedback form. Tomorrow, on the occasion of 77th Independence Day, we are organizing a special event where you can present any topics related to. I'll be sharing the flyer. Just give me a second. So this link has been already shared with you all, and those who have not yet received can find it on the website. So tomorrow, on the occasion of 77th Independence Day, and also on the occasion of 76th anniversary of Indian independence. So we have completed 76 years of independence and we are celebrating 77th Independence Day. Often many people have confusion whether it is 77th Independence Day or 76th Independence Day. Anniversary is celebrated after 1 year, and Independence Day is like a birthday. So that's the 77th Independence Day and 76th anniversary. So many people often, because we were commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, so since 2-3 years, the same issue comes up every time. Even today also many people were asking, no, which one? So that's why we mentioned both. It also gives certain clarity. So based on the theme, glorious past and present and future, we invite presentations from anyone. So who can present, who can participate, anyone who is interested can present and participate. The minimum age for participation, there is no eligibility criteria except the minimum age of the participant or presenter should be 8 years, above 8 years, 8 years and above. That is the only eligibility criteria. to participate and present. So the minimum duration of session is 3 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes. Maximum is 30 minutes. So you can make presentations, either oral or PowerPoint or paper presentation, anything, as part of Independence Day celebrations tomorrow. And we have 3 sessions scheduled, and it depends on the number of presentations tomorrow. Morning session would start at 11 a.m., afternoon session at 2 p.m., and evening session at 6 p.m. So based on the number of entries, number of presentations, we will schedule accordingly. And there will be a certificate also issued, which will be different from conference certificate. You will get an additional certificate. You can register. And you can also make presentations. It's not too technical or scientific. You can take up any freedom fighter, social reformer, or you can talk about freedom struggle, or you can choose any unsung hero or warrior who has fought for the freedom struggle and sacrificed their lives. You can pick up a wide range of topics and themes, and you can make a presentation. You can talk about 76 years of Indian independence in various fields or sectors, in education or in health, or you can even get into subcategories or sub-themes about freedom struggle or freedom fighters. You can choose one of the freedom fighter and talk about him or her, and various freedom movements or struggles. You can talk anyone or partly. Because time is limited, you can take up any simple topic or restrict yourself. Of course, there is no restriction of number of presentations. So feel free to choose any topic. You can present on any aspect, anything from agriculture to space technology, anything, because development includes all spheres of life. You can choose any topic and you can make a presentation of minimum 3 to 5 minutes, maximum 30 minutes. So we have 3 sessions: morning session at 11 o'clock, afternoon session at 2 o'clock, and evening session at 6 o'clock. It starts and ends as soon as the presentations completed, because this is a very short notice. Only today we have announced. Earlier we thought of having an event, because as we already have launched this 10 days program, we thought we'll make part of it. But even this also we'll see based on the number of participations. Anyway, you'll be getting additional certificate. No need to worry about that, as announced. But we'll see whether it can be part of this 10 days or it will be an individual event. So all those who have registered for this 10 days or those who have not registered also can register for this and make your presentations. This is not too scientific, too technical. Everyone, even a school student, can also, because we will be reading about so many social reformers, freedom fighters in our school, college, universities, or otherwise also in general. So you can pick up any one topic and make presentation. You will be provided with presentation certificate. for the topic on which you have presented. And in a similar way, you can also participate in the sessions so that you can get participation certificate based on the attendance. So for all the registered participants, we'll be issuing the certificates in due course of time. So the joining link is same for all the events. It is the same link. So we request everyone to share among your friends, colleagues, students, especially among school and college students. They can use this opportunity and also be part of the Independence Day celebrations, and also pay tribute to the lives and sacrifices of great souls who gave us freedom. Remember them, pay tribute to them, and also celebrate the 76 years of Indian independence and freedom. So thank you everyone once again for joining us. See you all tomorrow. Take care. Good night. Before you leave, make sure you complete and submit the feedback form. So see you all tomorrow. Take care. Good night.